Hi, this is A New Nigeria with Wale Oluwade. This is your current affairs program where we critically examine the strategic issues bedeviling Nigeria's developmental aspirations and boldly offer practical suggestions on building the Nigeria of our collective desires. Today's episode promises to be engaging and exciting. My guest is already here to assist me in doing justice and also give depth and clarity to the topic of our discourse. As always, it's going to be evidence-driven, honest, bold, and a no-holds-barred conversation. So get ready as we begin in earnest. And now, let's get on with it. Today, we're looking at the state of the nation and the politics of 2023 elections. Nigeria is currently mired in the throes of multidimensional crises, rampant insecurities, banditry, kidnappings, armed robberies, terrorist attacks, insurgencies, etc. Also, the economy is sinking further in the doldrums. Hyperinflation, huge external debts, general and youth unemployment, low revenues, poor electricity and petroleum supplies, a weak currency, etc. Yet in the midst of this, we're preparing for general elections next year to effect a peaceful change of political leadership, ostensibly to steer the nation away from its current downward spiral and onto the path of tangible growth and development. Yet, the question remains, why did Nigeria regress socioeconomically drastically in the last 7 years? What are some of the pitfalls that led the country to its present terminus? How do we avoid the pitfalls of the past as we attempt a restart in 2023? Are the political class and elites demonstrating an understanding of the enormity of the task ahead and a readiness to effect the desperately needed change? These are some of the issues we're examining today. We'll take this short break, and when we return, we'll get right into the conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back from that short break. My guest is already here, Mr. Igo Agariga. A brief introduction. Mr. Igo used to be the former Abuja bureau chief for the Guardian Nigerian newspaper. Also, he is the current president of the Civil Liberties Organization, that is CLO, and is also a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Mr. Igo, you're welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Yes,
it's been a while.
Absolutely, it has. It has.
Let's get right into our conversation. Now, taking a scan of Nigeria today in comparison to 2015, in your opinion, and if I might add without being biased or partisan, how did we arrive at this present juncture? How did we arrive where we are today?
Well, a lot of us saw this coming. Pre-2015, the country was already wobbling under former President Goodluck Jonathan. It was not wobbling because Jonathan wasn't effective, but Jonathan was able to weather the storm with an array of very competent ministerial appointees. If you remember, former Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is now the Director General at the World Trade Center. You know, she was the head of the economic team of the Jonathan administration. And of course, you had people like Adesina now, who is now the head of the African Development Bank, and a couple of them, you know, very competent ministers who were in the Jonathan administration. The Nigerian economy was the #1 in Africa. And of course, the investments were coming in, FDIs, foreign direct investments were coming in. It became a destination for foreigners. They were also around.
I beg to differ when you say Nigerians were happy, because I remember Nigerians were disenchanted, and I was one of those Nigerians who were disenchanted. Most Nigerians were thoroughly disenchanted with President Jonathan. Definitely not on this scale of this present administration, but we were. And don't also forget, it was some obvious lapses in the leadership style of President Jonathan that lent, credence to the clamor for a change of government. And the APC then, the different parties, the legacy parties, were able to come together and ride on that crest wave of disenchantment, to power. But let me say this, on behalf of this administration, they would say that they probably lost a year and a half, maybe not 2 years, just a year and a half, to the COVID pandemic. is that excuse tenable for where we are right now, especially on the three main issues they campaigned on: tackling insecurity, reforming or revamping the economy, and three, corruption. How do you assess the performance?
You see, it's easy to blame former President Jonathan for the security issues that bedeviled the country between 2013, 14, and 15. Now, how did we how was the country enveloped in insecurity? If you recall, now evidence is emerging how some individuals actually began to bring in some of these terrorists into the country, ostensibly to achieve some political gains. Many Nigerians were not aware of this, and so the APC campaigned around the issue of trying to deal very squarely with the issues of insecurity. So while President Jonathan should be held accountable for not dealing decisively with the issue, but when it is driven internally, when it is instigated by internal elements who were bent on using it as a political capital to unseat an incumbent president, and of course you could give some marks to Jonathan that is not entirely his making. And you see, you could groom a small tiger as a pet in your house, but to what extent the tiger would consume members of your household, you wouldn't know. So these guys were brought in. An arrangement by the mega political parties. They came together, Action Congress of Nigeria, the CPC, ABGA, and all of that. Yes, they came together, they were able to take power. But what have they done with power? It's left for us.
So for you, the pandemic as an excuse for the economic doldrums, does it hold water for you?
It was a global issue. Now, it's not an isolated issue. So when people come to say, oh, the pandemic, we lost 1 year, we couldn't, there was not much for us to do during the pandemic. Look at China, for example. Wuhan in China was allegedly an area in China where the coronavirus gained its foothold, where it started from. But you see, China bounced back. The economy didn't suffer. A country of over 1.4 billion. We are just hovering around 200 million.
I actually like the points where you said we're not the only one. It's not an isolated.
Exactly.
So it's not. And President Jonathan also dealt with the issue of Ebola.
Apparently, yes. That's a good point. Yeah.
Now, considering the colossal sums the federal government has sunk into the defense and security sectors in the last, not just this current administration, even not to President Jonathan. Igo, if I give you the figures, you would probably fall down from the chair. The figures are staggering. They are humongous. Defense and security in the last 10 years, have probably taken the largest chunk of our yearly appropriations. At least I know since this administration came in. Yet, when you hear of our massacre, the Kuje prison break, the Kaduna train attack, which is still ongoing because we still have our compatriots in the bandits' stranglehold. And I mean, just 2 days ago or a couple of days ago, just in our backyard here at Buhari, Nigerian Law School was under an attack. A couple of army officers and some other personnel were slain. So, if you juxtapose the colossal sums sunk into that sector and what we're seeing, the spate of, insecurity, killings, Nigeria has become a canvas of bloodshed. What goes through your mind?
Well, it's clearly a case of leadership failure. Not just General Buhari alone. Leadership. I think the closest we got to dealing with these issues was under former President Olusegun Obasanjo. I give it to him all the time that he was a president who understood Nigeria, who used the instrumentality of democracy and a bit of military tactics to bind the country in a manner that people just couldn't misbehave. Under President Obasanjo, you couldn't this kind of things wouldn't happen. That is the truth. In the last 2 years, the Buhari administration mobilized about $1 billion from across the 36 states of the country. That is outside the other humongous amount of money, the ones that were budgeted to buy Tucano jets, or that they were used to import other combat helicopter other military platforms and all of that. Now, the point is we are not seeing the evidence of those huge financial spendings on the military, on the Nigerian landscape,
Results.
on security results. It's not result-oriented. We can't see anything. The more money we throw into buying military platform, the more, terrorists threaten the country. Nigeria is becoming, as you said, it's a big killing field that is going on under the present government. And in the early stages, they argued that Boko Haram elements were, they were having a free ride around Abuja. But the killings, even though they were special, they bombed the UN headquarters and a few places in Abuja. The security presence at the time, you could see it was very heavy. Roads were blocked. You just can't move freely in Abuja. And the Jonathan administration was able to tame, even though there was an aggressive intention to overrun Abuja, the government resisted it. But under this administration, the painful aspect of it is that you cannot see evidence of government on ground. I drive around Abuja at night. You can't see policemen anywhere. You can't see the military anywhere. You can't see security anywhere. And with what Idris Wasi said, what the deputy speaker of the House of Representatives yesterday, where he actually revealed that 44 intelligence reports were given prior to the Kuje attack, and it was ignored. All right. So, who are the individuals who are ignoring these intelligence reports? And this has been, the trajectory from the days of Chibok, where this whole intelligence was given, and down to the entire landscape of Borno State, Yobe State, Adamawa, where attacks take place, even the killings of policemen in Taraba State, and everything appears to be swept under the carpet. Nothing is heard after attacks take place. It's just assurances and statements are issued, and then everybody waits for the next attack. It is really, really sad, and that is the state of our nation.
Couldn't agree more with you, Igo. We'll take this short break and come back for our conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Mr. Igo, since the beginning of this year, we've had about 7 national grid collapses. Hyperinflation has wiped out completely Nigerians' disposable income. Oftentimes now when I go, I love to go to the market. So oftentimes I go to the market, I'm actually thinking maybe somebody stole money from my pocket. So maybe I get some cash, I keep it at home. By the time I take twice out of I begin to look for money, that maybe did something happen? Is there a spirit taking money from my hand? So, and ASU has been on strike for 5 months on now. As we speak here, the Nigerian Labour Congress is spearheading a nationwide protest. Yet, in the midst of this, Nigerian elites and political class, do they seem to you like they are conscious of the pains, the terrible pains Nigerians are going through? I asked this question on the backdrop of a couple of weeks ago, the governor of Rivers State. On this program, we say it as it is, no sugarcoating. The governor of Rivers State was in the UK for his son's graduation. And 3 or 4 state governors were with him on that trip. Of course, the wife was there also. I saw Okezie Ekweazu was in that picture. Sheima Kindeof, they were there. Nigerian students in tertiary institutions can't go to school, but your kid is graduating. I don't mind wherever you send your kids to school, but do it quietly. As a leader, do it quietly. But now you are rubbing it in the faces of the children of the Nigerians who can afford foreign education. This morning, news broke that the Speaker of the Federal House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, is attending a course, maybe a short, of course, definitely it's got to be one of these short courses at Harvard University. And he also put it out there, because for me it's a taunt, you're taunting Nigerians. What does that say to you about the quality of our leadership?
I don't blame them. I don't blame Nigerian leaders. I blame the followers. I blame Nigerians. I blame the citizens. As president of the CLO, I've had, of course, the CLO, is at the vanguard of pro-democracy movement in Nigeria that worked with other similar organizations, pro-democracy and human rights, including the civil society, including labor in the past, to chase the military from away from power. And after chasing, apparently, civil society organizations were not also prepared for power. Otherwise, these characters that we see now wouldn't be in power. We were not prepared for power. We just thought that, okay, we'll take these guys out and then we'll sit down to find a way to rearrange Nigeria such that the best people can emerge. But of course, the same leaders in the past who have stolen, who have looted the country so much, were able to quickly mobilize their ranks and then they seize power from the rest of us. And that's how we have found ourselves where we are. So the point to be made here is that a state governor travels from a state to go and embark on a show of shame. I call this a show of shame. So we're in the US or UK, wherever they send their children to. And you meet the state calm and peaceful. So who do you blame? I don't blame the governor. I blame people in Rivers State. I blame, Nigerians who failed to occupy the National Assembly and prevent Bajabamila from returning to the National Assembly. Because a parliament that cannot hold the executive accountable to Nigerians. Why are they parliamentarians? They are there to provide checks and balances, to prevent the executive from embarking in what we call executive recklessness. What the Buhari administration is doing, basically, by not responding or addressing, the educational hiccups, and allowing ASU to go on strike for over 5 months. It is executive recklessness and irresponsibility. It is the duty of the parliament to have checked that. And so when the parliament faced Nigerians who sent them there should have insisted that you have no business being paid with taxpayers' money when you are not doing what you should do. That is where not aggression, citizen participation in the democratic process by occupying spaces is very critical in deepening the democratic process itself.
You touched on the role of the National Assembly, and you just preempted me because that's where I'm going to. The failure of this current administration, the egregious failure, the monumental failure of the current administration. What, in your opinion, could be responsible for the National Assembly's absolute, nonchalance, to provide any sanctions whatsoever? Now, I say this on the backdrop of what is going on, or what has gone on currently in the United Kingdom, where the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, for what in Nigeria would not even receive any mention of any sort. That guy was prevailed upon by members of his own party, members of parliament. He was prevailed upon because the top echelon began to resign, and they put pressure on him that your position is no longer tenable. The Prime Minister of Britain had to resign as leader of the Conservative Party, and that as soon as a new leader emerges, then he would step down as Prime Minister. That is the role of the legislature in a democracy. Here we have a legislature that, when they were about to come in, the Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, told the whole world that whatever the president sends to the chamber is good. Whatever he requests for will be granted, and they've complied. Is there? Can you speak briefly, because so that we can take one or two more questions? Can you speak briefly to the kinds of human beings we have at the National Assembly who have absolutely not the simplest of, not the littlest modicum of the weighty responsibility the Constitution imposed on them? Their duties are 3: lawmaking, representation, and oversight. And they failed, in my own opinion. What do you think?
Well, you see, there's a funny video that trends. Each time I watch it, I just smile, where President Buhari was depicted as saying from top to bottom. The president was saying from top to bottom. What that simply means, from his own office to the bottom is rotten. There's nothing to be expected from them. You see, the National Assembly, the parliament in every country in the world,
where they practice democracy,
is to hold the executive accountable to the people. So people like Ahmed Lawan, when he made that statement, what did Nigerians do? Now I am beginning to put the blame on the rest of us who allowed these guys to go in there, make those reckless statements, and they are allowed to actually see through, pursue through Those reckless comments that they make. I'm sure this is the Ninth National Assembly is the worst in the history of democracy between 1999 and now. And the encouraging thing now, moving forward, building a new Nigeria, trying to encourage ourselves, is that more youths are now registering to pick up their permanent voters card. Not just having the voters card now, by next year it should be effectively used, you know, by way of a voter revolution to get every vestige of inefficient leadership that has presented itself one way or the other, including their children that they are now training in Europe, whilst the children of the poor in Nigeria are at home. We should deny their children access to public space in this country. That is the way to go in building a new Nigeria.
Brilliant, Igo. Brilliant. Finally, I mean, we have to wrap up. Time flies when you're doing something, you know, meaningful. 2023 is fast approaching. In your own opinion, what are the germane issues? Just mention 2 or 3. The most important issues that the candidates, there are about 18 of them now, maybe 14, I don't know. What are the germane 3 main issues that the candidates needs to speak to Nigerians about their plans or manifestos? And if any of them is not willing to speak to Nigerians convincingly about what they're willing to do to deal with these issues, Nigerians shouldn't take them seriously, please.
If I'm offering myself for public office, I will...
Either president or governor.
Yes, either president or governor. I will give a timeline to Nigerians that in 6 months, I'm going to do this. I was the student union president.
So mention 3 of these issues you will do.
What the security, very key. Security, agriculture,
Let me
food,
ask you, Igo, how if you are, of course you are not, but if assuming you were, or you are to advise, how do we deal with this security? What's your view? How do we solve this problem?
A brigade of Nigerian army can take all these so-called terrorists.
So why are they not doing so?
Out. Official complicity. I've said it everywhere that I had to speak on it. So official complicity.
So what's the second and third one?
So we need to deal with that. The other one is economy. We need to fix the economy of this country.
In maybe like 30 seconds, how do we fix this economy?
Once you fix security and there's rule of law, there will be investment.
Okay.
So the economy will naturally gravitate. And then, of course, the refiner, we can't be having producing crude oil and then take it to Niger and someone and then revert it back and then we pay in dollars. So the individuals who are running the oil and gas sector now must be taken out for new individuals to come in to patriotically serve the interests of Nigerians. That is very critical. Very, very critical. Brilliant. And of course, as I said, agriculture, food, we need to deal with that. Because once there's security, people will be able to access their farms and then produce, and then we can eat what we produce. Otherwise, and then of course, Nigerians must hold these individuals accountable, not just coming to speak to us. They should tell us that when you fail to achieve those results, given the timelines, you will voluntarily resign, or Nigerians should be able to chase you out.
Thank you very much.
That is where we should be headed.
Thank you very much, Igo. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
I hope to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the end of the interview segment. We'll take this short break, and when we come back, I'll give my closing statements. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Democracy is described as the best form of government globally for specific reasons. The active participation of the majority of the people in the critical decisions affecting their nation states and individual quality of lives. Sadly, in the last 23 years, however, Nigerians haven't gotten the much sought after dividends of democratic governance. A key contributing factor to this is the lack of accountability by elected officials. Oftentimes, these elected officials become, as it were, tin gods or idols who are above the people who put them in the positions they occupy. To correct this anomaly going forward, I offer the following suggestions for your kind considerations. Number 1, Nigerians must interact with all those who have presented themselves for political offices and demand from them their specific charters of service, otherwise called manifestos, to be delivered if elected into office. Secondly, a thorough interrogation of these charters of service. Any candidate who is unable to present one or effectively convince the voters on the contents of same should be denied votes at next year's elections. Thirdly, any candidate who refuses to participate in any Meet the Voters program, for example, TV debates, media interactions such as this, or town halls, etc., such a person is unfit to occupy political offices. Such an individual as is currently the case, will get into office and become gods or idols who are to be worshipped and totally unaccountable to no one. Number 4, this is important. Candidates for states and federal legislatures must be interrogated to ascertain their understanding of their sacred responsibilities beyond making laws, which is oversight of the executive arm of government. Any candidate who is unwilling to vote for the impeachment of a non-performing executive member is unfit to be a legislature. Please, the 5th one, please go out there and register to vote and ensure you collect your PVCs, that is permanent voters cards. There are just 4 days left for this exercise. Your vote is your power in a democracy. A qualified citizen who refuses to exercise this inalienable right has lost the power to effect transformational change in his or her society and is thus complicit in its misgovernance. Now, 2023 general elections are a few months away. We Nigerians have a golden opportunity to choose a new set of leaders at the federal and state tiers of government. I urge you to seize this opportunity with both hands. Know your candidates. Know their individual characters and experiences on the job they seek. Know their past performance and antecedents. Choose on facts and not on sentiments. Let's save this country from imminent collapse. Change requires action, and positive change requires positive action. I believe in a new Nigeria, and it is possible. And those are my closing thoughts. Now, that's the program for today. Remember to follow me on my different social media handles. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can watch this video and other videos there at your convenience. Drop your comments also. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.